Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race, we are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 393 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited that you are here and excited for you to get to know my guest a little bit more today. Now, you probably know Fiona O'Keeffe from her win at the Olympic trials in the marathon here in the US. As her first ever marathon, in her debut, she won the Olympic trials. Pretty amazing result for the 25-year-old. Her coaches, Alistair and Amy Cragg, were both former Olympic distance runners. And you've probably heard the story about her race. You probably heard her on other podcasts. She's been all over the place, really. And rightly so. What she did was amazing. But today we are going to talk about a different element. Yes, we do go into a little bit about her running journey and how is settling in within her, how she's feeling now that there's been a few months between the race and this day right here. But we also are talking about her other passion. Fiona, as joyful as this makes me, is also very passionate environmentally. And so I wanted to talk about what she has seen, what she believes can be a part of the change, and why she is using her platform to be an opportunity to promote change and why that's important. So today it's going to be a bit of a different conversation to what you're used to with Fiona, but very much an important piece, very much something that is important to her. And so I hope you will go into this with an open mind. You will listen, learn, maybe feel some freedom and some permission giving that you don't have to be perfect at environmentalism. And without any further ado, let's hear from one of our sponsors and get right to the episode with Fiona. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I have been working with Tracksmith for 5 years now. I have loved every moment of it, the support that they give to me, the support that they give to the running community. I want to remind you that there is still time for you to get the PR bonus. That's getting $100 off your next Tracksmith purchase by setting a new PR in 2024. Be sure to go make the most of that opportunity while you still have it. That is a huge give from Tracksmith to support runners in their pursuit of goals, whatever that may be. Doesn't matter how fast your PR is, if you can prove that, you will get that $100. Go check that out right now if you have not already. You can go to tracksmith.com/Tina. But I want to talk to you today about, I mentioned about 5 years ago, Tracksmith sent me my first pair of session speed shorts. These are high stretch, they're lightweight. They have about, I guess I shouldn't say at the inseam because it's different for men and women, but they do have the shorter inseam, and it's just at the right length on my leg. Now, that first pair of shorts they sent me, I still wear multiple times a week in a row, wash it, wear it again. It is my go-to. I have used it hundreds of times, and it is still the exact same quality it was when I first got that pair. These shorts are my favorite by far, and they are something that I continue to use year after year. I encourage you to go check out those session speed shorts and the other items that Tracksmith has on offer. Remember, Tracksmith is known for their quality, their durability, which is one of the best ways we can be environmentally conscious. You can go to tracksmith.com/Tina to check out my favorites. Be sure to go check out that PR bonus if you have not already. Fiona, welcome to the Running for Real podcast. I am very excited you are here. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so I have to say, I've told you this. We've been texting for a while and setting this up and brainstorming for ideas. But I obviously watched you race the Olympic trials, as did probably most people listening here. Was really cool to see you come through on your debut marathon. But I was more excited when Mary Wittenberg sent me a message saying, did you know that Fiona is very interested and passionate environmentally? Mm-hmm. And I mean, that was that brought me way more joy. No offense to your performance, than seeing you win, because I thought, wow, this is so exciting that someone is showing and being a part of this conversation that shows that you can have a passion, you can have an environmentally conscious lens, but also be committed to performance and something that is, really important to you in a different way. So, I want to begin with that. We're going to go into your running a little bit. I want to just let listeners know I am not going to ask Fiona to relive that moment. What did it feel like? There's about 700 other podcast episodes and things you can go read and listen to about that. But we are going to go into some side pieces about your running. But before we get to that, with that environmental piece, I'm curious, has that always been something that has been a passion for you? Like, people ask me this all the time, like, when did you first recognize that this was something that you felt passionate about, the environmental kind of tint to your life?
Yeah, I think so. I grew up in California and just grew up spending a ton of time outside. So I definitely always loved and appreciated nature. And then, as I got older, I was running outside all the time. And we did start to see a lot of forest fires, and there was a big drought. Like, the whole time I was in high school, I never ran a race in the rain because the drought was so bad. So I did start to see the crossover of it early on. And I guess, the natural world is always something that I've cared about and appreciated. So then as I got older and got into college and everything, I decided to study environmental science, with the idea that I would probably end up in that space. And instead, running was going better than I thought it might. So I ended up pursuing that for now. But I hope that I can find a way to balance the two passions.
For sure. No, I think there's definitely potential for that in many different ways. And it doesn't mean that, you can kind of have these two scales essentially, and while yours is slightly heavier on the running end of it, it someday might tilt the other way, which is kind of what I feel has been the case with me as well, and that I've now tilted towards the environmental piece being the key here. And so then with your running journey, you obviously had this breakout. Well, let's maybe start there. People might think, oh, she had this breakout race. But for you, as with often the case when people say it was an overnight success, and it's no, I've actually been training for this for 10 years. Maybe not specifically that was your goal 10 years ago, but you've been wanting to be the best that you could. What would you like to say in response to that when people say that this was kind of a breakout, this was you were an unexpected person that came through in that sense? Does that bother you at all, or are you do you feel that was the case?
I guess, with it being my first marathon, just the marathon distance, there is so much of an unknown quantity on race day that definitely things did go well for it being my first marathon. But I guess, yeah, on the other hand, I've been training at a high level for a while now, and training a true distance runner, definitely for the last few years. So, I guess in my eyes, it's not as surprising as it might seem. It's not I stepped out there and ran 20 miles for the first time on that day. So it's maybe not as good of a story, but it wasn't as automatic as it might seem.
Mm-hmm. It's not when I ran in the United New York half a few weeks ago, little Nas X was in the race. And firstly, the people I was running with, Sandy and Kaylee, asked him to take a picture of us, which is really funny now I think about it. That we didn't know who he was, but he, I don't know if you saw this, he went out and I guess he was in New York on the Friday. The race is on Sunday. He arrived in New York, saw an ad for the race and was like, I want to do that. Can you get me in? Got into the race, ran it in high top sneakers. And just fully embracing the let's see what happens mindset. So we're not putting you in the same boat as that in terms of just deciding that you wanted to do this, and it just went well out of nowhere. So now, how do you feel in terms of, I'm assuming it's somewhat sunk in, but do you find yourself even sometimes at night when you're trying to fall asleep, be like, wow, that actually happened?
Yeah, definitely. It still feels like a little bit surreal because even though it's like been on my radar and been a big goal for a while, like it's kind of crazy when it actually comes together and does happen. So just processing that has definitely been an ongoing journey, but an exciting one. I'm excited about what it means and the direction that it puts me in, I guess.
This period right now, being early mid-April, probably feels, at least to me, it feels like it would be quite a stressful period in some ways because it's far enough out to where you're not like fully into the training, but then you also are close enough to where you still have to take things seriously. So how are you negotiating this period of time where it's a bit of a limbo time?
Right. Yeah. It's been nice to just get back in the groove, like with my team here in North Carolina. I found that helpful just to kind of get back into normal routines and everything. And I guess try to find like other aspects of training to focus on, like putting some shorter races on the calendar for the upcoming months. So it's not just all like, we're just thinking about Paris constantly. And then I've also been like working on just some of my weaknesses, like getting better in the gym and that kind of thing. So I guess I've been trying to stay more just process oriented than think too much about the big picture just yet, because it's still a long ways out. And, I think that I'm the type of person who can get excited about things a little too early. So I'm trying to just stay patient and not think too much specifically about the Olympics just yet.
Do you see yourself in the months to come as someone who will fully lock in and kind of, shut yourself down essentially from the outside world other than you and your teammates? Or will you be someone who will always need to have other things in your life to remind you that, running isn't everything?
I guess that's a balance. I do think I'll be like a little bit more focused as the race gets closer. I definitely find that it's still like important for me to just maintain like friendships and relationships leading into it for that bit of perspective. That being said, I do think like I'll slow down on stuff like interviews and social media and stuff like that leading into it, because that kind of can create some external noise that isn't always helpful.
Sure. Has it been overwhelming, the media requests and all that you have been doing? Are you the kind of person who was prepared for that or used to that?
No, I was definitely not prepared. Coming into it, just like I'd had some decent success in my pro career, but not the kind that you really get much media attention for. I feel like there's just not very much coverage of distance running unless you are making those teams and that kind of stuff, or running major marathons. And I hadn't run a major yet. So yeah, it was definitely all new. It's been helpful to have like my agent to help me, sort out what things are important and how I can utilize that. But I'm definitely still learning.
Yeah, it's good that you do have an agent, and it's something, I don't think I've talked about this on the podcast, but it's important to note that when you do have something that is very much in the public eye or going viral or whatever it might be, in that moment, I mean, it is very overwhelming in terms of phone ringing a lot, get from like random numbers. People who operate in those worlds are very like quick, like, come on, I need this right now. Like, I need you to answer. I need this question. I need to get this out in an hour, la, la, la. And they make everything feel very intense. And it's hard to describe how overwhelming that can be. And especially, when it's all happening at the same time. And it all feels very important. There's all kinds of different places coming that, you would never think would be interested in you or someone close to you. And it's a very surreal feling. And so I'm glad you got someone as like a buffer there that doesn't make it, that debilitating for you as it could have been. Because it's a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm glad that you've had that time to settle. You've got that time to get going into your training. And yeah, so, when I spoke to you about coming on this podcast, I did say that we weren't going to go through all the same questions because you very much have done all of that. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, we wanted this to be a podcast where we talked about the environmental side, your passion for this, how you want to be a kind of vehicle for change in some ways with the general running population, and but also recognizing that your training, your goals, what you're working towards, especially during your Olympic journey here, needs to be the priority. And so I want to start with that it is okay for someone listening to this to have performance goals, to be focused on their training, to really want to give every bit of themselves to a goal or a race. And you can still care or be thinking environmentally. So I want to begin by asking you said that for you, being in nature was a big part of this for you, that made you really appreciate and recognize the beauty around you and wanting to protect that. I'd love for you to expand a little bit more on that in terms of do you think it helps us as human beings to be out in nature? I've always felt that runners of all people should be the ones who are noticing what's going on in our climate because we are out there in nature. Even if you're in a city, you still are surrounded by nature. So yeah, tell us your thoughts on that of just, why being out in nature has been such an important piece of your environmental journey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like we're even starting to see research studies about the benefits of time in green spaces and everything, psychologically. But I can just speak on my own experience of how much better I feel when I've been outside for a run in the sunshine and the fresh air, and everything. And, just being able to notice that. And I feel like it gives me time to think and slow down and, just connect to my surroundings. And, it's always a cool run if you pass a neat animal or something like that. Just today, my teammate picked up, or she didn't pick up actually, but there was this giant spider crossing the trail and we all stopped to look at it. And so it's just little stuff like that, a lot of the time you wouldn't notice or even, have the opportunity to observe. And I think, running is for runners naturally the vehicle that gets us out there.
Yeah. It's very interesting that once you start noticing those things, you almost can't stop. I find a lot of the time now, trees that I've run past for years, I now am paying attention to the details of, or like you said, animals and their patterns. I'm paying attention to. I'm recognizing when a squirrel is making that chittering noise, whereas before I probably put it down to just a bird making a chirp, but it's actually a squirrel. And have you noticed that rubbing off onto your teammates a little bit, or are they quite conscious of being out in nature? You said about the spider, obviously, but just in general, do they see it similarly to you?
I think a lot of them do, actually. And I think that maybe is a more common experience than we realize, in the running community. A lot of us are using running, whether we recognize it or not, as a way to, be pretty well connected to the natural world. So I think that it is pretty common, and it's everyone's just talking about the weather on a run, whether we recognize that or not, that's us connecting to something outside of ourselves, which I find pretty cool.
Yeah. Have you found yourself talking to your teammates about environmental facts that you're learning about, or you mentioned about the research with the being out in green space and how that's good for us as human beings? Do you find you're relaying that information to them, or in my case, anyone that will listen?
I guess certain people on the team. Yeah. I don't try to like get up on a soapbox about it. But I do have some teammates who I know are like particularly interested in this stuff. And we'll have like one-off discussions about that kind of thing.
I think that brings up a very good point in that I genuinely think most people, especially within the running space, but just in general, do want to have conversations about, you know, maybe the nervousness they have for our future, or the amount of weather patterns, extreme weather events that are happening. And even when it comes to running, like, what if the race is cancelled? What if, something causes the race to have to change? I think there is actually a lot more of that than most people realize, but everyone is kind of worrying about it on their own. Mm-hmm. And so it is good to have these conversations. And I say that with the listeners in mind, you know, don't be afraid to bring up, like, I'm feeling a little nervous about the race. Like, you know, it's already been a really warm season. What if it is, 80 degrees in November for the New York Marathon when it's supposed to be 40? Speaking to those fears that people have. Is there anything you would add to that from your conversations, from your experience, that, there's a lot of people being nervous about the future, or wanting to have these conversations, but afraid to say it for fear of like people saying, why are you bringing that negativity up?
Right. Yeah, I guess I don't think it's being negative. I think it's being realistic. I think that, we are just seeing a lot more discussion around temperatures on race day and that kind of thing. And I think that's a conversation that pretty much everyone is engaging in, regardless of where they stand on environmental issues. So I think that if we can find a way to, demonstrate more that, like, okay, let's just take the next step and acknowledge that this is part of a pattern. It's not random that we're seeing more races moved around or canceled due to these warmer temperatures and other factors. So maybe we can try to make it more constructive instead of worrying alone, and talk about, like, okay, this is a reality that we're going to face, and why is this happening, and what can we do, and how can we make more responsible decisions, like individually and as a collective, and really, like, hopefully pushing for systemic change, because I think that a lot of people end up feeling guilty or like they're not doing enough individually, when really, like, it's these larger systems that we're operating within that are really going to move the needle or not.
Thank you to Precision for your support of me and the Running for Real podcast. I hoped I would be running lots of ultras this year. That is not my reality. I am having surgery, and that's going to mean ultras are definitely not something I'm going to be doing, at least in the first half of the year. But one of the beautiful things about this is that it does give me the opportunity to really train and practice my stomach, because one of the biggest things for us as runners is getting our fueling correctly. And if, by the way, you don't know how much fuel you should be taking, how much hydration, electrolytes you should be taking, Precision has a free fuel and electrolyte, or fuel and hydration planner. It's free. You don't have to use Precision stuff, but you should definitely go check out the links in the show notes to go get yourself that planner, use it, make the most of it. You can also get a free consultation with the Precision team. No strings attached. Just go take opportunity of that. That is in the show notes. But today I want to talk about practicing. So one of the biggest things is practicing your gel and nutrition. And for me, that's something I was never particularly good at when I was running at my best. And I know I left a lot of time on the table by not doing that. So that's where while I have been biking, I'm up to 34 miles, hoping to get to 50 before I go in for my surgery. With that, I've been able to test out the gels. The PF30 gels has 30 grams of carb. They go down easily. You don't get flavor fatigue. They are just enjoyable to take down, even not just for a gel, just in general. And I definitely encourage you to go check them out. If you use code TINA at precisionhydration.com, you can get yourself 15% off. That is code TINA. Go check out their gels. Go check out their chews, their electrolytes. They will take care of you. And I'm excited to hear what you think. Go check it out. Absolutely. And I think the biggest key, this is something I'm always trying to get out there to listeners and especially, my audience, is that, as you said, it's not on the individuals, because a lot of the industries that don't want things to change will push that message, because then people get overwhelmed, exhausted, think, I can't, what's the point? Give up, stay quiet. And we're not going to individual action our way out of this mess. Like, the fossil fuel companies were the ones that came up with the carbon footprint calculator intentionally to distract us. But that said, us as individuals, as you mentioned, coming together, that is where the change happens, because we're not going to individual action our way out of this. But if we come together and all say, hey, we want change, we all agree that this needs to be changed, that is when change happens. And within the running space, that's where I really work to encourage listeners, and those of you listening now, it's not about you choosing reusable straws or never flying again or going vegan overnight. But it is about you saying to the races that you care about, that you attend, hey, what are you doing to be more environmentally conscious? When are you going to shift out of using, the plastic cups that get thrown away? When are you going to start sorting your food waste? If you start asking these questions, even if it's just a general, what are you doing environmentally? That sends that race director a flag saying, okay, someone cares about this. And if enough people do that, then they will invest the money to make change happen. So from your perspective there, what do you see your role as an elite athlete in that sense to, getting that systemic change to happen?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like exactly what you just said, just letting people know that it is something that I care about. And I think a lot of us do. So hopefully just like getting that conversation out in the open more so, especially like in the road running and track and field space. I think that this conversation has been happening like very productively in the trail running world for a while now, which does make sense because like you think about the trails, you think about like beautiful outdoor spaces, but maybe, just taking that next step and recognizing that the environmental issues do affect other areas of the running community as well. And hopefully we can just make our voices heard. And I like the idea of imperfect advocacy a lot, because I'm not perfect. I'm flying around to all these races, using new running shoes all the time, that kind of thing. And, I'm aware that, individually, like my actions do probably have a substantial carbon impact, but at the same time, like I do have a bit of a larger platform now. So that hopefully gives me the ability to speak on this issue a bit more, and just get more people in the running community to themselves acknowledge, I'm not like some climate saint out here, but I can let people know that this is something that I care about, and this is a conversation that we can just start to have more in the running community and work on solutions together.
Yep. And I think that is a good example of where you can have conversations with the companies that you are working with the brands that you have, to say, I want you to, this is something that is important to me. And, if you're behind me, you need to consider this yourself. But then the listeners, the people that admire you, the fans of yours, if your brands do some work in this area and do go above and beyond to make products that are environmentally conscious, that's where they come in. And their role is to say, okay, I recognize that, this new item is $5 extra. If you have the ability to pay that $5 and can afford to take that cost, that by you doing that, you are signaling to that brand, do more of this. And so I think you can do the work from the back end, and then the audience, the people that look up to you, can then stand by you and say, yes, this matters to us as well as the general running community. And just, I always say that just as like an ocean is made up of droplets, like, while it doesn't feel like our one individual choice matters. And we also, as you said about imperfect advocacy, we don't want to get caught up in like, if you make a mistake or if you can't do something, beating yourself up about it. But when you do have the ability to make a choice, like, it matters. Imperfect advocacy to you, what does that mean?
I guess to me, it means not being afraid to just start, even if you don't know exactly what that looks like. Like, I honestly am still figuring out what that means. But yeah, just like being open to raising your voice about climate and other environmental issues. I think that it's really important to start like engaging with the information and the system, and like advocating for getting out to vote, I think is really important, and just starting to learn more about what these issues mean on a local level too is a good place to start, wherever your community is. So I guess it's just being willing to go into it with like that beginner's mindset, and try to learn and engage with people without feeling like you need to yourself be perfect about everything, and be okay that there's like maybe a little bit of hypocrisy happening, but we're all learning, and we can hopefully all be on this journey just towards improvement, I guess.
Yeah, so true. I want to one example of this that you and I have talked about previously is hydration on races. Mm-hmm. I mentioned to you that by far and away, the number one thing that most runners bring up to me when it comes to the environmental side of racing is the cups on the road. Now, you as an elite and you probably haven't seen that side of things, or maybe you have in like a local race, of where the cups are just all over the place on the ground. We're talking in the millions at the major marathons of cups used during those races. And so that's very much the image that most people have of sustainability is, how do we reduce or remove those cups? And you and I have talked about how I really believe that the way forward, one of the things that individual runners can do, if possible, is carry your own fuel, carry your own hydration. And that could mean a collapsible cup. That could mean a bottle. And while for you as an elite athlete, you grab your bottle, drink from it, throw it down, it's collected. Mm-hmm. For the average runner, it will mean they have to hold on to their bottle the whole time. Mm-hmm. But I would love for you to talk to the audience here about why. Okay, I think the biggest hesitation to that is it's going to slow me down. If I have to carry water, it's going to slow me down. If I have to refill, it's going to slow me down. I personally think that, especially in the case of carrying a bottle, again, not being an elite athlete where you get your bottle handed to you, you throw it down. I actually think it would save time for most people because you're not slowing down to do the grab a cup dance with the volunteers. Yeah. But I'd love to hear your side of things of what are some of the advantages to if you can have your own stuff on the course? Yeah,
I mean, I've seen a lot of people just running out on the trail with their own bottles. So I would think that could be helpful if you're already practicing that in training. But additionally, I think that you'll be able to get more fluids down if you're carrying your own bottle, because I've had the experience of trying to drink from a cup, just like in some shorter races, and like inevitably, like most of it just goes in the air. So unless you're like physically stopping to drink, I think that you'll be able to take in more as you're running if you're carrying your own fluids, and also you'll be able to have exactly what you want, which could be really helpful. Like on race day, for me, it was very important to know exactly what was going to be in my bottles and even in what order. So I had like one sports drink for the first half of the race and another one for the second half. One that was like more carb heavy and then one that was more electrolyte. So if you're carrying your own, you can choose exactly what you want in there, and you can have like practiced with it and just have more control over it. And like that can be really helpful just to avoid any like stomach issues or something else that might, derail you out there.
Yeah. Especially if performance is the goal, as you said. I mean, that's probably one of the main tips that I think most elite athletes would give to a recreational runner is like practice your fueling. Like that's the most critical piece of running well is making sure you're fueled correctly. And making sure you do it before race day. And so this gives you the opportunity to train with it. And then on race day, and I want to take this moment to say to listeners, especially the soft flasks, the handhelds are not what they used to be. Fiona, you probably, I don't know if you would have even come across these because I think they were more like 10 plus years ago, but the handhelds used to be these very thick plastic, really hard to squeeze, like took most of my like finger strength to squeeze any liquid out. Nowadays, particularly Hydropack has come out with these. The soft flasks are so easy. They have a flip top lid. You can drink so easily. The water comes out easy, but it doesn't, spray when you're not using it. They really have done some incredible innovations. And so before you discount it and say, well, I don't want to carry that because it's going to weigh me down or it's going to slow me down, I actually think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the innovations that have happened. And if you're running fast enough, you may not even need a refill. But as Fiona mentioned, you can get your own fuel on. You can take it more. You don't have to, as you said, with the cup, you don't have to try and like throw it into your face, get it all up your nose and coughing in one go, because that's when you take it. You can sip it over time, which is just like, it's not a case of trying to take it in and then being like, like trying to get your breath back. But you can like just take a sip every, minute or two. And that's a much better way of doing it. So any last thoughts on that piece of it, of the hydration? I really think that's one way runners can signify to races that this is important. And the more people that do it, the more races will adjust and have people ready to refill bottles or cups quickly, as opposed to volunteers to hand out water cups.
Yeah, I mean, if I had like only the choice between those paper cups or carrying my own bottle the whole time, I honestly think that I would choose to carry a bottle. Just for like from a performance standpoint, I think that would be preferable.
Well, there you go, listeners. You got that from the winner of the Olympic trials. And I absolutely agree with you. Like, I know it is hard for listeners to hear this and be like, okay, but you, Fiona, and also me in my past, you got handed your bottle. So that's a completely different game. And it is. But what you just said right there, like, is true. That it's, if you didn't have the choice, you would still choose to take your own stuff. Okay. Moving through the environmental conversation here and what people can do themselves. As you did mention about your environmental advocacy here, your science degree, you talked about it with Ali on the Run. Have you found other runners have come to talk to you about your environmental passion because they feel like, oh, finally there's someone I can talk to about these things? Or have you not? I suppose maybe you haven't even had many interactions with the quote unquote the public yet, but
yeah, I'd say it's been more within the running community so far, like just other runners that I've met or known, like if I've ever mentioned something in a post or something, like sometimes I'll get a comment from someone and be like, oh, that's cool. Like I didn't know like that was on their radar as well. So yeah, but I haven't really spoken with members of the public about this yet.
How do you feel that you are going to balance this moving forward as you want to use your platform, your opportunity, this time that you have kind of where eyes are on you, where people are listening to you, respecting you? How do you balance speaking out about it knowing that you have this, not once in a lifetime, but you have this real opportunity here, but also knowing that you don't want to overdo it because, you know, we're already a lot of the time being shoved messages down our throat that, like, you know, the planet is warming, we're running out of time, and that stuff freaks people out. So how do you balance that in your head of what you're sharing about those concerns and those thoughts you have with also sharing, you know, other fluffy things, I suppose?
Yeah, for sure. I don't want it to be like, just like I don't want running to be my whole entire personality. I don't want the environmental stuff to become that either. And so I definitely will balance it out with the rest of who I am. But I do think that there are ways to, you know, just have a conversation about impacts that we're seeing and let that hopefully just inform choices that we're making and just create more awareness in the running community in general. I do think that for the rest of my career, at least while I'm at my peak, like the running will be the number one focus. However, I've seen athletes like in other sports also who care about these issues and seen them working with organizations like Protect Our Winners. They're doing a lot of work like in winter sports because skiing and other winter sports that are literally dependent on whether there's a snowpack or not, obviously are dealing firsthand with a lot of climate impacts. So I think I would look to athletes working in those avenues and see how they're going about it as an example.
Taking care of your health isn't always easy, but it should at least be simple. That's why for the last 5 years, I've been drinking AG1 every day. No exceptions, 1 scoop mixed in water once a day, every day, and it makes me feel good. I feel energized. I can take on the day knowing no matter what happens, no matter what my food intake looks like, I have taken care of myself. That's because each serving of AG1 delivers my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more. It's a powerfully healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. I know with AG1, I'm getting this high quality nutrition. Every batch goes through this rigorous testing process so you know it's safe. Their ingredients are sourced for absorption, potency, and nutrient density. If there's one product I had to recommend to elevate your health, it's AG1. And that's why I've partnered with them for so long. So if you want to take ownership of your health, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 and K2 and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/Tina. That's drinkag1.com/Tina. Check it out. To other athletes that might be listening to this, people that you race against, people who are up and coming in the elite world, if they care about this, but they feel nervous to speak out about it, if it sacrifices potential opportunities for them with brands or otherwise, what would you say to those people?
I guess I would say that I really do think that it's becoming more and more common, and I think that it can actually be a big benefit to speak on these issues and show that you care about something. And I do think like it's the way of the future. Like we're all going to be forced to adapt and address these issues. So I think thinking ahead of time about what we can do will be beneficial. And I do think there will be opportunities that come up alongside of it.
Do you think that is a fear that a lot of athletes have in terms of like, even like you said, if it's maybe not as much of a risk as they think it might be, do you think that is a reason why more athletes don't speak out environmentally?
Probably, yeah. I think that anything that can have any sort of political spin put on it can feel like something that we want to avoid. You know, it's the whole like line, I think it's shut up and dribble, that basketball players get. But I think that, that narrative does get fed to athletes that, oh, it's just your job to perform. But I think that we're just seeing more open conversations in general in athletics. Like I think that the conversation around mental health, for example, has really taken off in the last few years in a really positive way. I think that people just feel that they can speak more freely on that. So I'm hoping that, not that this is a comparable issue really, but just in general that athletes feel more comfortable having real conversations about other concerns that they have in other areas of their lives. And, environmental issues might be one of those for people. So if it is something that people care about, just, not being afraid to show that they are a full person who, has thoughts and worries and concerns and passions outside of the sport too.
I think that's a really good point and important. And most brands now have made it clear that they don't want just someone who runs fast, period. Like it's not the world of having people that represent you is not just about like, can you run fast? Yes. Okay, here you go. Here's a contract. Like you've got to be a well-rounded person, as you mentioned, and having a passion, having something that you advocate for is attractive in many ways, because it is showing that you're not just obsessed with running. And if your running goes wrong, you're going to like spiral out of control and disappear off the face of the earth, that you have other things that keep you going. And from just to add to your point, I don't know if you find this or you will start to find this. When I first started really speaking out about climate, it wasn't like, and it still isn't in some ways, like if I post about like, went for a beautiful run in this cool place, like that definitely is going to get more engagement in a positive way than me telling people about something environmental, because it isn't going to necessarily be the biggest reach or the thing that gets to the most people. But the people that do pay attention, that do see you sharing about this often, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's not maybe getting the traction that other things might, that is the stuff that really, people appreciate that vulnerability and that bravery to speak out about something, knowing that you're putting yourself out there. I think you saw this last week. I put out a video about how to run with a reusable cup. And the nasty comments I got on there were like insane level of like personal insults. And it didn't bother me through some miracle. But it really was a good example of where you have to kind of be a bit okay with people not liking what you're sharing, especially environmentally, because as you mentioned, it is a political area. But the positive that comes from that, like at least I like to think that if that gets 10 more people carrying a cup, that's a start, right? And it's better than no people carrying a cup. So sorry, I just went off on a bit of a tangent there, but all that to say, like, keep going, even if it feels like it's a bit of a scary thing to be doing. Anything you'd add there?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I've said already, like I'm not perfect. I'm just kind of getting started on this and figuring it out, or trying to at least. But I guess like, if you feel like you would regret not saying something, it's better to get out there and say it and stand for something, and deal with if there's a little bit of negative feedback on the other side of it. Honestly, like it's so silly that people would be commenting negative things on a video of someone running with a reusable cup. Like, how is that hurting anybody? So at the end of the day, I think it's like knowing what sits well with you. And yeah, just if you feel more aligned with your values because of what you're doing or speaking out about, then that's going to make a bigger impact than whatever little grumpy comments you might get.
So to wrap up here with the final few questions, you've spoken about imperfect advocacy. You also just mentioned there you're just getting started. Do you ever feel guilt with like traveling to races, or maybe the like you said about the shoes, you have to, shoes are something that allow you to run healthy and allow you to be strong. How do you work through that? Or at least I'm guessing some guilt that you have with your lifestyle choices. I know I definitely feel that sometimes. So what do you do to work through that?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say that early on, I maybe felt like it completely like delegitimized anything that I had to say about environmental issues. But I guess I'm just trying to push myself to have more of these conversations, and see that as a vehicle of action, hopefully. And then I do try to do little things like make sure that I'm donating old and used gear instead of just throwing it away. Yeah, stuff like that. But yeah, I do feel guilty sometimes about the amount of travel. But I try to see it as a privilege, and also like if I can perform better, then I will have more of a platform to speak out on this stuff, and be taken a bit more seriously. So I guess to that extent, yeah, that's how I think about it. And I also think that, this is the system that we have right now. So I don't think that, me choosing to move away to the woods and live off the land, because that will have zero carbon impact, does anything to help change that system. Like just removing myself from it doesn't help change what already exists.
Which once again is the point of like, and I'm in a similar boat to you in that I travel probably more than I'm comfortable with, but I have to weigh out what is the purpose of this. Well, if between you and I, we can recruit 50,000 runners to care about environmental issues, to vote at their local elections for a candidate who cares about climate, to reach out to their favorite shoe or apparel company and say, hey, what are you doing environmentally? If we can do that, then that brings people together. That gets change to happen. As you said, if it's just like, I'm not buying this brand anymore because I don't agree with them, but not saying anything about it, like that's not where change happens. We have to come together, organize and mobilize to make change happen. And so it is a tricky thing to have to weigh the benefits of like, but is this helpful? But as you said, in your case, the bigger your platform, the bigger your opportunity to speak out and have that power to get, the bigger systems in place to change. With that said, if we could dream 10 years into the future, a race, let's take one of the majors. I'm not going to give any names specifically just to not put it on them. But if we could take a major marathon in 10 years time, what could that look like if you were dreaming environmentally?
Yeah, I guess like one small idea, I mean, maybe races are already doing this, but I would love to see like an option for medals and t-shirts, stuff like that, to be optional. Because I know like just thinking about like in high school, like you do all these races, you get all these t-shirts and medals, and maybe as a high schooler it's meaningful, but maybe, you're in your 40s, this is your 50th marathon. You're like, I could care less about getting a t-shirt from this race. So maybe if there was an option to instead like give $25 to an environmental organization, instead, as you're like filling out a registration form, or maybe you opt out and you get a small discount on your race entry, something like that. I would love to see. I would love to see just more publicly available information about specific environmental impacts of different races. If that was just communicated upfront to more runners, I think that would be great. And I think the kind of stuff that you're doing with working on sustainability on race day, just creating more awareness around those efforts, and like, hey, like it's just part of what you think about going into a race, could be really cool.
Yeah, no, I love that. To answer your first question, that is, I mean, and I want to add before I say any more that I did not tell Fiona to say that, but that is one of the big things I am pushing for too. And it is starting to happen, but that again is another example of where you as a listener can reach out to your local race and say, hey, when are you going to offer a no t-shirt option? I love you. I want to race your race for years to come, but I don't need another t-shirt. Can you please offer an opt-out? It is as simple for the race organizer to add, no, I don't want a shirt, is just as simple as adding an extra option in their shirt options. It is that simple. The race registration platforms have made it very easy, but they just have to know that people don't want it. So that is one thing I would say to listeners, based on what Fiona said. Reach out to your local races. Say, when are we going to have a no t-shirt option, please? And medals, same thing. I actually did London last year, and sorry, I say that as if like I've done London 3 times, but last year when I did London, they had the option of an opt-out medal and t-shirt. And while only 0.5% took the medal option, which actually surprised me, but still only 0.5% took it. But you'll get this. I got a lot of satisfaction from when I walked through the finish area. When the volunteers saw me, they like put their hands up to say like, you don't get one. And I was like, I know. And I was like, thank you. I don't want one. Which, you know, at a certain point we have to, I mean, you know, if you want a medal, have a medal. But if you don't need a medal, that's another thing you can say. Like, is there an opt-out for a medal? Because for many of us, we don't have that. I also have a dream of, I really want to have useful items as options instead. Planting a tree or donating, as you said, is key. But I really love the idea of offering like one of those reusable cups instead of a t-shirt, or a reusable bottle instead of a t-shirt. You know, because then people can bring it to races themselves. But yeah, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised with what you're seeing. I know that a lot of races, especially the big ones, are working on it behind the scenes. Is very, very hard. Especially when I give a shout out to Chicago Event Management and New York Roadrunners are definitely doing the work. And it's going to be interesting to see. But a lot of it is, as you can imagine, the psychological piece. One idea that I have with the race La Jolla, which is doing the reusable cups instead of disposable at the event this year. A psychological piece for me would be to use the pins to pin the bib to the cup, so that the cup doesn't get taken away from the bib and then forgotten, but it stays with the cup, with the bib. So when they go to pin the bib, they have their cup too. So like, it's little things like that you have to kind of think ahead, because otherwise someone will stuff the cup in their bag and forget it to take it to race day. So a lot of what it is, as you mentioned, is just like getting people to see this as a part of race day, not seeing it as like another thing to remember, but it's just part of their race day experience. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Fiona, anything else? What would you like to share with the listeners just to wrap here? A final message you would like to remind them, or anything you want to share with them?
I guess just like, if anybody out there feels like they would like to reach out with their ideas, or, you know, if there's any conversations that they'd like to start, I'm open, and I would also encourage them to have those conversations at home and, in whatever their running community is, whether that's just, you know, the one friend that you meet up with, or if you meet with a run club or anything. I think that you might find that there's more of an audience and more willingness to engage on this stuff than you might imagine.
I love that. That's great advice. And I really appreciate you coming on to talk about this. As we've said, it does take some vulnerability. It puts yourself out there in a way that can be uncomfortable. So I appreciate your desire to want to make change happen and to use your platform for this. So thank you for all that you continue to do. And I'm so excited to see how you do in Paris. This is going to be so fun to watch you. And I hope training continues to go well.
Thanks. Yeah. And I just wanted to say thank you for reaching out after the trials about this stuff, because it's really cool to see someone doing the work that you're doing in this space and kind of leading the way. So yeah, I was wondering if there's anything that you're really excited about right now that you wanted to touch on too.
Okay. I feel like I've talked a lot in this episode when it's supposed to be about you. I'm excited about a lot of things. I've mentioned to the listeners about, and I've told you, I know separately, about the San Diego World Road Running Championships, which I hope you will be running in as well. I really feel excited for some of the initiatives that we are trying to do. And I feel like I've had a lot of people reach out with various ideas for using waste, using things to make, the awards or the medals, or finding interesting ways to engage people. I think because this is a one-off event, I could be a bit braver with it than the other big races would be able to be, because they have to, there are long time events. They have to constantly be thinking about next year. So I feel very excited about that. And I also do that La Jolla half marathon coming up on the 18th or 19th of May. That is going to be, everyone gets one of those Hydro Pack speed cups. And I'm very excited to see how that goes, because I think that could be the beginning of change if it goes well. So, yeah.
Very cool. Yeah.
We will see. I'll keep you posted. And I appreciate you asking that question. Thank you for joining me. And let's keep this conversation going with our listeners and get them engaged as well. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tina.
Before we go any further, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Running for Real team. Without them, I would not be able to do barely anything compared to what I'm able to do today. They are behind the scenes. They are there for me. I am just so appreciative of them. To Jeremy Nessel, our podcast editor, audio consultant, and someone who's been with me since the start. To Sally Pontarelli, our content and operations manager, who is there day to day doing all the things to help me be successful. To Kelsey Wang, our head of design, and Louise Murphy, our associate designer. And finally, to Sandy Gutierrez, our photographer and content strategist. I am appreciative of all of you and wouldn't be able to do what I do without you. So appreciative of Fiona for sharing her story, for sharing her environmental passion, and for that advice. I really loved everything she got to share with us today. I know I talked a lot in this episode, but I think it is also important to add different types of context. And I can't wait to see what Fiona does in this space in the future. We'll have links to go find Fiona, to everything we talked about today in the show notes by going to runningforreal.com/episode 393. There's also going to be links to our sponsors there, to Tracksmith, to Precision, and to AG1. Go get those special offers when you go to runningforreal.com/episode 393. We will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening.